Hey friends, welcome to Sonido Cumbiaton, a podcast where we talk arts, culture, politics, and all that mess, but from
an undocumented and queer perspective.
My name is DJ Sizzle, and I'm joined by my amazing co-host
Julio Salgado. If you haven't done so, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and share this with a friend, a comadre, your tia, your tío, your primo, your lover, your daddy. And follow us on social media, Instagram and TikTok at Cumbiaton_LA. And if you're watching this on our brand new Sonido Cumbiaton Instagram, thank you for following us. Amiga, ¿cómo estás? ¿Cómo están las alergias?
Girl, the allergies are allergy-ing. It's allergy season. Y y'all, a mí nunca me ha pegado así tan fuerte, but it is crazy, y'all. Like, I am, ¿qué iba a decir? I'm constipated. I'm constipated in the brain.
Brain constipation. What does that mean? You can't get your thoughts out?
How do you say that you're constipated, pero lo sientes acá arriba, güey?
You're Jesús, ¿cómo se dice?
ESL.
You're feeling.
ESL.
Yeah, you're feeling the pressure, the head pressure.
Yeah, sinus pressure, nasal pressure, life
Your sinus.
pressure. Girl, the horrors persist, but so do I. We are out here. Do you suffer from allergies, friend?
Girl, I'm Mexican. We don't. There's
Yeah.
no. You've been in this country for far too long. I don't know that this is a scientific fact, but do other people have allergies around the world? Or is it just a US thing? You and Jesus both, and my husband,
Yeah.
and everybody
Yeah.
else. Am I the only immigrant with no allergies?
You know what? I think it also depends on like the person and what affects them and what doesn't. Wait, a ti no te afecta half of the things que nos afecta a nosotros. Like you've been able to make it this far along in life, girl, with things
Baby,
that everybody else would have like quit at, the
baby.
first like quarter of it. Pero you out here, girl. You
Yeah,
you use a tank, girl.
yeah. You're not gonna say anything about my outfit though?
Oh my God. Can we get a little commotion for the outfit? Okay, okay, back. Okay, and
Um,
what do we have at the top? Who are
so
you
at the
wearing?
I am wearing Rio, Japan. Shout out to the homie Rio. This is supposed to be, well, actually, I have it upside down. Was supposed to be a mask.
Okay.
He made this for me for the Academy Museum opening, and I haven't worn it ever since. Actually, I wore it to Cumbiaton once. But the reason I'm wearing this is because we had the Met Gala yesterday, and I am inspired.
Y fuiste.
And from t from YouTube.
Oh, okay,
Watched
okay, okay,
it.
okay.
Yeah.
Mm.
But we'll talk about that later. So she wanted to be dandy.
Mm-hmm.
Superfly was the theme. And so I wanted to look good.
I love that. Good for you, Julio. Look at Julio giving us fashion, girl.
I
Ella,
paid for this.
tapándole la boca a todas las haters que dicen que nada más Julio sale con sus activist shirts.
I mean, I'm still wearing my
Girl, cállate. That could have been, we didn't have to know that, girl. I'm over here trying to hype you up, and you're like, but wait.
pero wait. So, amiga, ¿cómo estás? ¿Cómo andas? ¿Qué dice la gente? ¿Qué dice mi gente latino?
You know what? Other than stuffy, I am pretty happy because this past week we hosted our Cumbiaton Noche de Cumbia in San Francisco, and it was a vibe. People came out to dance, and we celebrated. Just hay momentos en esta vida that are super, heavy currently, but it's always great to come back into these spaces and see friends that we haven't seen in a long time and hug them and chat with them and dance with them. So I'm super happy that, we got to do Cumbiaton San Francisco with all of our DJs. Shout out to all the DJs that came out. If you want to connect a little bit further with them, they're all on our Cumbiaton LA page. They rocked it. People were having a great time. Shout out to Alejandro y los Perros, who also put on an amazing performance for our folks. And, it was a vibe. I'm so happy I got to see a lot of friends that we hadn't seen in a long time. And shout out to Jesus también for taking our pictures, for taking our photos, our videos. Shout out to Inlakesh, who also provided a cumbia dance class for folks. So shout out to all the people that got there early. They learned a little two-step. The instructor was Mirel, and she is amazing. Over 15 years of dancing instruction under her belt, and she was amazing. Anyway, that's what my highlight was for this weekend. Julio, what did you do?
By the way, I was watching All From Far Away and definitely FOMO, Cumbiaton FOMO was had.
Yeah. We
But
missed you all too. And shout out to Pablo too, our other co-producer who was there. He's currently on his way back to LA. That's why he couldn't join in today,
yeah,
but he was there as well. Shout out Pablo. Thank you so much for all your help.
shout out Pueblo. Well, this past week has been
Wait a minute. One
what?
last thing, bro. Somebody came, one of the artists came into the back room, into the green room. If y'all don't know this, we usually get green rooms at, stages and places wherever we're at, where artists can go hang out to decompress, right before their set times. And one of the DJs came up and he saw Pablo there, working on some stuff for the event. And Pablo, bald head, he had his little glasses on, his little cute shirt on. And then I introduced him. I'm like, hey, I'm just gonna call him DJ because I'm not gonna put him on blast. I said, hey, this is our friend Pablo. He's our Cumbiaton teammate as well. He's like, oh yeah, from the podcast, right? Dude, that podcast is so cool. And Pablo's like, uh-huh, yeah,
She's
okay.
she's my Paula's my doppelganger. She's been my doppelganger since I met her back in 2013. She's been often confused in the gay bars of LA as Julio, and he goes along with the joke because I'm like, as long as you don't get in trouble, ho, and say my name,
Hmm.
be free to use my name, and it's a
My
good
name and my
comparison.
fame, they say.
My name and my pseudo fame. Well, that's
Uh-huh.
this. I've never been, like called Pablo, so um, I suppose that's a good thing for Pablo.
Cabrona. Shout out to Pablo and shout
Shout
out
out,
to,
girl.
we usually have an ongoing joke here. It's Julio Salgado number one and Julio Salgado number two.
Yeah,
Depending on the night, it will be the Julio Salgado that you see. If you see Julio Salgado with a drink on the dance floor twerking it out,
it's
it,
number two.
it's number two. It's probably Pablo. It's probably not Julio number
I've
one.
I taught her well. She is my mentee, so I've taught her well. This weekend I got to hang out with a bunch of artists. As you may or may not know, I co-created this fellowship for writers, folks who want to write for TV, called the Disruptors Fellowship. And this year we had our fifth year reunion, and so we had folks who have been part of the program as alumni, people who have been mentors, and just getting us together, organizing an event to bring artists together and really ask ask them, right? Like, hey, how are you? What do you need, right? And so it was really exciting. Shout out to Eliseo, Ivan's son, who came out and helped us out. He volunteered. Sweet, sweet young man. He wants to be a filmmaker, and I'm like, when Ivan was telling us, we went to Yosemite a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, if your son wants to get into filmmaker, it's just, get the young kids out there. If you, whatever you want to do, get in, volunteer, talk to other people who are doing the work, because that's how you're going to learn, right? And so I was excited to have them come over and help us out and learn and meet some cool people. So that was really great. Thank you, Sisto, for making that connection. And then another thing that I want to give another shout out. I know we've had Orale director here a couple of. We had it for our first guest, Gavi, and we are actually doing a mural. We just finished a mural at their space. I know, yay! But I wanted to shout out my friend Maisha, friend of the podcast. But we were the reason why I'm mentioning it is as we were last Monday. It was like 8 p.m. We're like tired painting, and we look at each other and we're like, who does this? Like, like art really is a choice. You really choose to put your body to, perhaps write on a Saturday night instead of being out in the club. But we do it for the love of the art, and so it's been great to be in the company of artists as we trying to figure out what this mess of a world is. And I'm just happy to have a community of artists. So yeah, a lot of that, and I just hope that we continue to do more art because times are crazy.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to obviously you, Julio, for putting on that event with the disruptors, right? Shout out to you for being a mentor for the youth, right? And also making those connections, especially in this day and age. It's super important, right? To also be the people that we wished we could have had growing up. So, gracias, Julio, for doing that. Shout out to everyone who attended the disruptors gathering. Shout out to Maisha. Shout out to all the folks that choose to also show up to create art in these trying times, right? And this actually brings us to our next segment here, Julio. And it is something that, as we speak about like what we like to do, not only as artists, but as people in times of, turmoil or chaos, right? I think this is something that hits home with us, unfortunately, in a way that, is really it's really sad. And Julio, I'll let you kind of just, introduce our next topic here because, it is something that like came to all of us and you probably saw it on our Sonido Cumbiaton Instagram. So Julio, do you want to talk a little bit more about what our next topic is going to be?
Yes, 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 yes. So, for our hot topic, I thought we could talk about a video that maybe some of y'all saw from a famous TikToker. I'm not gonna say his name, it's just we won't. But basically, shout out to Javier Hernandez, our homie who shared this with us. And it's a video that went viral of over 100. This is from USA Today. Over 100 undocumented immigrants arrested at an underground Colorado nightclub. At least 114 people were detained and placed on buses for processing and likely eventual deportation in Colorado Springs on April 27, according to the DEA's Rocky Mountain Division. The arrests were part of an enforcement operation and drug investigation involving over 300 officers and agents from federal and local agencies. And so this video was going around of this TikToker saying, well, I am glad that this is happening at a club and not at a work site, which neither one of them should make you happy, right? And so people were sort of in the comments of the TikTok video. Some people were like, "Yeah, if you're undocumented or you're an immigrant, you shouldn't go out and put yourself in danger." Which reminded me a lot of in the early 90s when you saw those folks Fox News were like, "Do you know where your kid's at?" And the flyer parties of the 90s. We were those kids. And look at us, we turned out okay. But this really brought to one of the conversations that we started having was around the good immigrant versus a bad immigrant, right? Like you shouldn't have to constantly prove how good of an immigrant you are. And just by the way, just because you go to a club and just because you are wanting to have fun does not a bad immigrant make, right? And so we really wanted to get into this conversation because this narrative has been around for many years within the immigrant rights movement. I actually have a comic strip for the Delos in the LA Times titled Good Immigrant, Bad Immigrant, where I call it my Sex in the City, where I share a lot of my life and what it means to be an immigrant, right? It's not just, I'm not constantly thinking about deportations. I live, I love, I am messy, right? And a lot of the times as immigrants, as people of color, right, we don't get to be two-dimensional, right? We have to fall into these two categories, right? And so yeah, that's sort of the topic. What is your take on the good immigrant versus bad immigrant narrative? Is that good? Is that bad? Should we get rid of it? Should let
Yeah.
people live?
Yeah, live and let live, girl. And I've never been one to really, uplift those narratives, right? When we talk about immigrant folks, particularly, right, when we talk about bad immigrants, right? Anybody can be a bad immigrant, girl. It just makes one choice, unfortunate choice, right? Nobody is perfect, right? And one bad choice can land you in the bad immigrant narrative, right? And I think on that point, narratives are so, so, so important. The way, we view people, the way we talk about people, right, is how policies are, placed. Words have a lot of weight to them, right? For me, it's we shift the narrative and we shift the culture, right? Like, anybody can currently under this administration or social political time that we're going through, immigrants are being heavily criminalized, right? So anything can land you as a criminal, a misdemeanor, a felony, right? And the dangerous part about that is that unfortunately, once you get labeled as that, right, it's easier to kind of dehumanize you, right? And I think that's where it becomes dangerous because once we are seen as subhuman, right, then it's easier to be like, oh, well, those people are just criminals, right? And I hear this rhetoric in, the immigrants' rights movement, particularly from younger folks, right? No somos criminales, somos personas que somos estudiantes, somos trabajadores, X, Y, and Z. But again, I come back to that a speeding ticket can make you, right, a criminal. A jaywalking ticket can make you a criminal, right? And it doesn't necessarily mean that you went to do something like with ill intent, right? It's just a choice. Unfortunately, that happens, or sometimes you get profiled, right? So I think we do really have to be careful in the way that, we use these words, and in the way that we also kind of target our people, right? Our people are worthy of having fun, right? No somos nada más like workhorses or like, just buried ourselves in like school, right? Like we all need to let loose. We all have the right to have fun, right? We all have the right to use music and art as a way to uplift and heal each other. And, for reasons that are pretty obvious to our listeners, right? Like this does not sit well with, me, not only as a DJ, but as an event producer también, because it's like, I want to make sure that all of the events and all the things that we are doing have our community's best interests in mind, right? That we are providing safe and brave spaces for people to come and rejoice and heal on the dance floor, right? And once we really start, kind of having these narratives of like, well, those people, because they're partying, they deserve to, be arrested or they deserve to be X, Y, and Z. But it's like, no, fam, some people are just trying to survive, right? We talk about coping mechanisms. We talk about how each and every one of us tries to get through difficult times, right? Not everybody is linear, right? Some people choose art, other people choose the outdoors, other people choose communities, right? And you can find all of that within the spaces that we are cultivating. But, these narratives here, it's so sad and it's really enraging, right? That said activists, quote unquote, is really kind of putting forth this idea because again it becomes so dangerous, and I think that's why we also make it such a important topic here, right? The way we talk to each other, the way we use words, because again I go back into we're shifting the narrative and you'll shift the culture, right? I don't know, Julio, like what other thoughts you have on this issue.
Yeah, I remember the first time that I encounter this good immigrant bad narrative or good immigrant bad immigrant narrative was in college actually. Jesus and myself, when we were in college, we used to publish this zine called El Reflejo. And we used to throw we used to throw parties on the weekends, and we would invite our friends, and we would charge them, and we would use that money to print the zines. And I remember I wrote a story for El Reflejo, and I was making an example of how it was back in the day. It was so hard to get into a bar, and mind you, I was already 21, and how hard it was a lot of the times to get into bars with our matriculas. And we were just trying to do what young 20-year-old college students do, right? Which is trying to have fun to deal with school. And the piece came out, and a fellow immigrant student was like, Julio, you could have used another example, like trying to go to the bank and how it's hard to use an ID. And I was like, girl, don't you like to have fun? Mind you, this specific individual did not like to go out. And so I was like, well, that's how you could have told that story. And this is the story that I want to tell because people identify, right? But to me, it was that another immigrant was telling me, can you be good because you're making us look bad? And that from then on, I sort of made it a mission, right, to make sure that like we should also be the ones having fun. And because we both know how after a long rally, after the meetings, you want to go and let out some steam. And so this spaces, especially also for queer folks, right, like the gay bars, are sanctuaries for us, right, because that's how we get to connect with each other. And so as somebody who's sober now, as somebody who doesn't necessarily go to these spaces anymore, I am not going to tell someone, well, what about me, the sober one? Like, we should create a space for me because blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, girl, I know the importance of clubs and and the
Nightlife.
nightlife. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And to take that away from me because it doesn't align with my current lifestyle, I think that is preposterous. Ooh, I used that word
Ooh,
correctly.
look at you, big word. I see you. Come
But you
on.
know what I'm saying? Like like don't yuck people's yum because you think that you're doing it to give us a better name, right? People already don't like us. People do not like us because of what we look like, the color of our skin. Um, and so for you to try so hard to like kiss ass, I and deny me of a night in the dance floor? No, ma'am, we're not gonna do that. It's just it's ridiculous. But listen, these ridiculous stories are happening every day, and more of these narratives are coming back to life. And so, what do we do? What do we do, Sissel, to kind of wrap up this conversation to perhaps tell people, hey, let's let's stay away from that. We tried that. We tried the good immigrant narrative, and guess what? We're still in the same boat.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with you 100%, right? It does come down to like different narratives, and I get it. We're living in different timelines and a different administration, although very similar to 2016, right? It's oddly similar. It's weird, but I think, one big takeaway is continuing to call in these people, right? I'm not necessarily here to like, highlight or like be like, yeah, we need to cancel people X, Y, and Z. But it's like, amongst ourselves, right? Like, let's talk about that. Let's check in. Let's call each other in. Like, let's not perpetuate the same systems and cycles that, the people that are trying up to oppress us or deny us of our rights are doing, right? There's already enough of that outside. We don't have to do that inside. We don't have to be the pick me's and be like, well, yes, maybe I agree with them. Girl, no matter what we do, no matter how we flip it, how we change it, how we work it and reverse it, right? They're always going to find a way to not include us because, I mean, come on now, y'all. Like, you already see the writings on the wall, and it's up to us to really talk amongst each other and be like, hey, fam, we can't be perpetuating the same cycles and systems that we're trying to fight. So, in that sentiment, right, I encourage all of us to continue to have these conversations with one another. Once you hear the narratives, once you hear like these red flag words, just call them in, right? And I think that's where the change happens. Change happens at home. Change happens with your friends, right? Change happens within your community. communities. And if you see anybody trying to kind of throw other people under the bus for the sake of being like, no, this is the way it should be, I really urge you to, speak up and say something, because that's the only way that we are going to be able to make adequate change within our communities. And ultimately, at the end of the day, that's all we have, right? We have each other. So let's not turn on each other. Let's not throw each other under the bus, right? Because we need these spaces just like we need activists, just like we need people on the streets, right? We also need people to be okay, to rejoice and refuel. And one way we can do it is through music and art. Which brings us to our next segment. This is one that Julio and I really want to continue to highlight and introduce because it is something that, again, is near and dear to our hearts as artists, but also as Cumbiaton folks, right? Who really rely on music and art to kind of, de-stress, decompress, and, really ground ourselves. So this past weekend, or maybe 2 weeks ago, I had the honor of hosting a workshop at Pasadena City College. Shout out to the Equipo team at PCC, in particular to Doctora Desiree Zuniga, who invited me to come on to talk to the students. At this workshop, we talked on the intersections of music and activism, which was really cool because we got to talk about artists like Bad Bunny, Kendrick Lamar, even the great Nina Simone, right? And other artists who are also using their platform to talk about political issues. I think this is the way that we find these intersections, right? That it doesn't have to be one or the other, right? Kind of tying it back to what we were talking about, not just because you're at the club, you're just kind of ignorant to what's happening, right? There can be intersections, and making it or framing these workshops around music and activism, you get the best of both worlds, right? And, for me, it was just really awesome to be able to talk about the importance of music and how music can basically change, your entire like mood psychologically, right? Just by playing like your favorite songs, tuning up, to your favorite genres or lo que sea, right? Getting those feel good vibes, right? At a later time, maybe we can break down like the political component of music and activism, right? But I think for today's like introduction of this brand new segment, we want to kind of keep it light and airy, in the spirit of like, using it as a way to cope with what's going on. So, in that spirit, Julio, I wanted to ask you, and you and I have gone back and forth on this. What are some of your musical favorites at this moment, or what are some of those shows that bring you joy, right? Like your feel good shows, your feel good songs, your feel good artists. Would you share some of that with us?
Yes. I love that you make that connection, Sissel, because I 100% agree with you, right? Like really the way that politics move, right, is it, art, culture, the way that, culture is moving faster. And so for me, this weekend actually was my husband's birthday. And for his birthday, I got tickets to go see Kylie Minogue, the one and only Miss Kylie. For us, when I first got the tickets, it was between Beyonce and Kylie, but we didn't have Beyonce money. Because, girl, those tickets were expensive.
That's
And
real.
then I know. And then, they released some tickets. But at this point in my life, I'm like, I can't do two concerts in 1 week. So we had tickets to go see Kylie Minogue. And to me, you know me, girl, I'm stuck in the music that I listened to in my youth, right? And Kylie Minogue, for the 40 something gay man's listening to this, Kylie Minogue was the girl. She was the Charlie XCX of our times, right? She was the underground darling, even though she had like a couple of mainstream songs, but really Kylie was for the gays. And it was beautiful to it was at the crypto arena, and it was so beautiful to see older gay men, brown and black. Our section was full of like brown and black, and a couple white twinks in there. But it reminded me of the days of arena, the days of circus, which are clubs that are no longer here. But for a lot of us, again, going to the club, the club conversation, the soundtrack of Kylie Minogue really was the soundtrack of my youth, right? It was the soundtrack of a time where maybe I wasn't super comfortable being myself, but here you have this white woman, singing about falling in love and really me going through that and being in a space where all the gays in there singing along to classics like La 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 Can't Get You Out of My Head. It was beautiful. And so I always go to Kylie when I'm feeling a little some type, but when I'm my walking music, it's a Kylie song. So yeah, that was really nice. It was really beautiful celebrating my husband's birthday. Because girl, we're gays of an age. And I'm like, damn, she is vintage now. Like Kylie is considered an oldie. She will probably be in K Earth 101 pretty soon.
Girl, she's up there with like the Chers now. She's up there with like the
Now wait a
Christina
minute.
Aguileras now. Yeah, girl. I mean, she's up there with the Lady Gagas now, you know?
Well, I think about it like for when I was growing up seeing Kylie Minogue, what now the kids see Kylie Minogue as Madonna is how I would see Madonna because Madonna was from the 80s, right? You get what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, like it's really time goes by really quick.
So fast, so
So
fast.
fast. Yeah.
And thank you so much for sharing that, Julio. Shout out to Gabriel for his birthday. Shout out Taurus season. Shout out to all the Tauruses listening
Yes.
to us. And thank you for tuning in. I think, and the reason why I say me and you go back and forth is because I like to tease Julio. I mean, we wouldn't be besties if we didn't roast each other. Our, our
Until I
friendship.
cry. Until I cry and
You'll
I'm like,
never
you
cry.
hate me?
No, I will say Julio is, the most recepting to the roast, but also because he dishes it out,
You
but
take it.
also he can receive it. He eats
Mhm.
it up. He's like, yes, all right,
Yum,
that
yum,
is
yum, yum,
true.
yum.
Yes, eat it up. But I think it's really awesome that you got to relive that and you got to see that with everybody with you. Again, I like to tease Julio because I'm like, wow, Julio, you listen to a lot of white women artists, from Gwen Stefani, which if you haven't heard, we also have that episode of the problematic faves, and maybe that's something we'll continue to bring up, right? Like how these artists have shaped the way we listen to music. Julio and I grew up like in the 80s and the 90s, right? And a lot of the artists that we had available to us that were on our TV screens were mostly white, right? So we have, the Kylie Minogues, we have the Madonnas, right? But living in SoCal, especially if you were around the beach cities, right? We didn't live by the beach. Maybe Julio, you did, but that was one of the areas that we got to, frequent as people that just wanted to get a little bit of a nature. You also heard a lot of like Sublime. You also heard a lot of 311. You also heard a lot of like these surfer rock bands, and some of those happen to be some of my faves too, right? So, some of my personal faves, all problematic. I know. I mean, at this point, we're all problematic, right? Jesus says, woohoo, Orange County. But, some of my faves include obviously Sublime, 311, the Red Hot Chili Peppers, the Foo Fighters, because that's the kind of age that I grew up in, right? The very like grunge, almost like era, rock era. But I also want to like amplify and uplift all of the amazing black and we didn't really have a lot of brown representation growing up until probably like the 2000s where we started to see kind of like the J-Los, right? We started to see that. But we also had a lot of like hip hop and R&B, right? Like for me, the first woman that I saw as a DJ was Sonique, and I'm talking about maybe in the 90s, dude, and it's still one of my favorite jams to this day, and she's the one who actually inspired me to be a DJ. I saw this beautiful black gender probably like fluid woman because she had such a like short like hairstyle, you know, and she was doing her thing. And I remember seeing that video and I was like, wow, she is so cool, you know. So I also want to bring forth like the artists that really kind of, you know, paved the way for a lot of us to be where we're at, or at minimum follow our artistic dreams, right? And I would love to continue to do this with you, Julio, because again, I think it is really important to like showcase, you know, where our music, our love for music comes from, right? And where it's at the moment. So, Julio, in that spirit too, what are some of your favorite POC artists that you used to listen to back in the day and that you still throw on from time to time to feel good?
Yeah. Well, I mean, before I continue, like I mean, why I love the theme of the Met Gala last night, which why I'm dressed up to the teeth, was super fine, tailoring black style. According to ABC News, in coordination with the Custom Institute exhibit of the same name, the theme takes the black dandy as its subject, examining the importance of clothing and style to the formation of black identities in the Atlantic diaspora. And so, a lot of that conversation, Sissel, also, because pop music also goes along with fashion, right? And fashion, a lot of the fashion that was very popular in the when we were growing up, right? It's like black, it came from black communities, but it wasn't until like a white woman like Gwen Stefani would wear that it
Or
was like, oh my
Madonna with
God, or
Vogue.
Madonna, exactly, right? And so I think we didn't have the language. It was just what it was available to us. But I love that, the Met Gala kind of got it together, and they had Coleman Domingo, and Pharrell Williams, who questionable, but the fact that, and they didn't have enough black women, I think, leading the decisions of the gala. But the looks, girl, the looks. Did you see Tiana Taylor's look? That was my favorite of the whole night. It was just beautiful. And so again, right? Like, we don't want to make every single thing that we consume political, but we can't help it but make it political because it is political, right? Music is political. Who gets to get on the radio? Who gets to be there? It's just political. And to your answer, what I was listening to in my younger days, it was honestly, it was Spanish music. It was like en español. For me, I know the girls, the Shakira of 2025. It is not the same Shakira of 1998, of the late 90s. Pies Descalzos and ¿Dónde están los ladrones? Was my Swami days. I used to work at the Paramount Swami, and I used to carry that Pink album. The background was pink, not the artist Pink. We love Pink. Do we love Pink? I don't know. But the pink background of Shakira in ¿Dónde están los ladrones? Was my sophomore year of high school. And so before I even got into English music, I was an ESL immigrant, high school kid who was listening to rock en español, Los Enanitos Verdes, Maná. That's what I grew up with. And then eventually, it was actually, I think I said it in the last episode when we were talking about Gwen Stefani. It was the Spice Girls that led me to listening to music in English. But Shakira was my girl. When she had the black hair and era gótica, she was like, there was actually a girl she was a year older than me, and I had a crush on her because she was experimenting when she was in high school. But I had a crush on her because she looked like Shakira. So maybe it wasn't a crush, it was just like, I want to be friends with her because she looks like Shakira. But
I
she had
mean,
like that dark, hair, and if funny enough, I used to tell her, "You look like Shakira," and she hated her. She was like, "I don't like her. She's annoying."
well, I
But
mean, everyone is entitled to their own opinion on their
yes.
artists, right? And I think it's really, you touched on something earlier, right? That I think is really important to highlight too, is that like a lot of the music that we listen to even today does stem from Black folks, right?
Mhm.
Black folks have always been at the forefront of music, culture, and everything that has to do with like the reality, pop culture reality that we have even today, right? right? So I want to, wrap this up, obviously, by highlighting that component and maybe diving deeper into it next time, that we can go ahead and, just showcase a little bit more of this. Well, this conversation is to be continued, right?
Yes.
Today we just kind of focus on all of our, youth favorites, but I think it's important to also like highlight like who really paved the way for the youth favorites to stand on the stages where they're at today. Because just like we talk about Kylie Minogue and Madonna, right, we also have to highlight people like Sonic, people like all of these other bands that came before, that literally paved the way for everybody to, the reason why we have house music. Shout out Chicago, right? It was the black underground culture. The reason why we have camp is because of the black drag queens and queer folks, right? The reason why we have reggaeton, right? The reason why we have dembow, the reason why we have cumbia stems from black culture. So again, I want to also elevate and highlight all of this as we wrap up our segment. But thank you again, Julio, for sharing your insights, some of your faves, right? Next time we'll continue this conversation again, but we thank each and every one of you for joining us on what is this, the fifth episode of Sonido Cumbiaton?
Fifth episode, girl.
Wow. And we still haven't fought. Look at us. Who would have thought?
L- Who would have thought? Growth. Growth.
Look at us.
Growth.
Muchísimas gracias to everyone who tuned in. If you haven't done so already, please do not forget to subscribe, and, share this podcast with your homegirl, with your fellow music lover, with your mama, with your tia, right? And, we want to continue to grow our community. Thank you again for, tuning in. Shout out to Jesus and Pablo, our co-producers of our show. Julio, do you want to say any last words before we start wrapping it up?
Just keep being creative and don't call your ex. I'm stealing that from you, girl.
Yeah, and if you don't know this, I say this at every party that I DJ, and if I'm the last DJ of the night, right, I'll go ahead and end it up with like, "Hey, thanks everyone for coming through." And whatever you do not text your ex because, girl, it is messy, it is drama out here. Y pues, para qué lastimarse, right? Just the
Yeah.
past is in the past. Move forward with whatever it is that, your
Life
future holds.
life is too short to get stuck on the past, girl. And if we are learning anything in this last couple of years, I would say is that fucking enjoy what you have right now. Enjoy the present. Be present. Put the phone down a little bit
Ooh,
after you finish watching our reels on Instagram. But put it down, right? Like life is not on Instagram and the social media. And go out and what are the kids are saying? Touch grass.
yeah, go
And
out and touch grass, smell the
yeah,
flowers.
girl, my husband, Cecil, and Tina. Sorry, Jesus, you're not included in that thread. Maybe you want to join. But they're all in this thread. It's really cute, actually. They're sharing, garden tips and vintage stuff and do that. Find a passion that is not require social media or a phone and live your life and let others live their life. Even the people, Sissel, that I don't like, I don't care. That's a lot of energy for me to go and be like, you shouldn't do this. You shouldn't do that. I'm like, no, if you're not with me, I don't need you. I don't need you in this space. So that's a long round of saying
Absolutely.
don't call your ex. And that can mean many things. Your ex friends, your ex coworkers, your ex. They're a reason why they're an ex. That they're a reason why they're in the past. Let that be in the past.
Let bygones be bygones,
And let be
girl.
bisexuals be bisexuals.
That
Boom.
part. That part. Happy Pride. Well,
We're,
we are nearing Pride.
yes.
Pride festivities, Pride season is upon us almost. And we'll be touching a little bit more on that as our segment and our episodes develop. But once again, muchísimas gracias to everyone for tuning in. Shout out to everyone who engages with us, whether it's on our Instagram at Sonido Cumbiaton, or Cumbiaton _ LA, or with Julio Salgado 83 and DJ Sizzle 007. Muchísimas gracias to each and every one of you, and we hope to see you at the next one. Send us your questions, send us your comments. We would love to shout you out. And yeah, y'all, that's it for our show. Muchísimas gracias for tuning in. And don't forget to support your local immigrant creatives. And last but never the least, do not text your
Your
ex.
ex.
Okay,
Yay.
nos vemos. Adiós.
Bye. Bye, bisexual.